I'll throw you a curveball. Describe your last bathroom experience with a movie title.
Oh, wow. That is a curveball.
It's definitely Fast and
I'll
Furious.
start. I'll start. 50 Shades of Grey.
All right, everybody, let's jump into this. For this week's episode, we're talking about a subject that we never talk about on the show, movies. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm kidding. Of course, we always talk about movies on this show, but that's just what we really like to do because, especially in quarantine, what else are we supposed to do? Am I supposed to go exercise?
What else there is?
Are we supposed to
What else
talk
there
to
is?
our wives? You know, I work really hard to be the host of this show, and all you guys do is make fun of me constantly. I make
every
one
opportunity.
slip up. I was actually watching some videos with my wife where it's like those fail videos. And if you ever watch fail videos, it's like the most primitive thing ever because you're laughing at like he fall down and you're like it's just funny somehow. But it also makes me not want to try anything because I'm like, oh, if I mess up, it's just online for everyone to see over and over again how big of an idiot I am. So
Yeah.
like, oh.
They were fail videos of your wife or fail videos with your wife?
Either one. I kind of like switch it up from time to time. I occasionally just take pictures of her. I'm like, what a fail. But anyway, so what we're going to do in today's episode is talk about movies, of course, like I mentioned before, but we have a certain set of topics that we are going to discuss about movies, and I think you guys will enjoy this. So, Luke, you have the list. What are we discussing?
All right, gents. You ready for this?
Are you ready for this? Dun, 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 dun.
First question.
Mm-hmm.
Best 90s or 80s action movie?
Dun, 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 dun.
Whoa.
Oh man, 80s and 90s are like the pinnacle of action movies to me, just because everything since the 90s there's been a few good ones. Don't get me wrong, there's been some good ones, but I feel like 80s and 90s is like those are the action decades. Am I wrong? Guys?
80s and 90s, yes, they're the action. Yes,
Yeah.
they're perfect.
They are pretty good. So, Cody, I want to know from you first and foremost, what is your favorite action movie from the 80s and 90s?
Terminator, obviously. And then we're looking at Die Hard as a close second. And then on from there, I'm not sure. Maybe Breakdown in 1997 or Retroactive.
Dude, you went from classics that everyone loves
To deep cuts.
to movies that nobody knows.
Oh, they know. And then Ransom, of course. And,
Back
Daylight.
with Ransom again.
Cody, you said Terminator. Which Terminator are you talking about?
Oh, both of them. The 80s one is a classic. You got to appreciate it.
You only get one. You got to pick one. Terminator 1 and Terminator 2. You got to pick one.
How about that? How about you F off?
I thought at first you were just like, how about that?
How about that? How about I pick one?
Wait,
God.
when did Terminator 2 come out?
92? Oh, 91.
So that was the 90s. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all you said Terminator. I would have totally guessed you would have said that. I think you probably like Terminator 2 a little bit better, but the first one is amazing. But I'm actually surprised you said Die Hard. I don't think I've ever heard you mention Die Hard as one of your favorites before.
That's just a classic that I think of. It's not necessarily my favorite. It's just I think about it a lot in my dreams.
I think Die Hard was like one of the first super well done action movies. That's why it became as famous as it is.
Wasn't that Bruce Willis's like breakout role?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's some
He was,
really
he was in the Honeymooners before that.
Yeah.
old honeymooners. So Cody says Terminator, or Terminator 2, maybe specifically. What about you, Joel? What's your pick?
I was debating between Terminator 2, but it just made the cut. Matrix 99.
Ooh.
That is mine. That was
Yeah.
always mine.
I know that just because it brought a whole new level of excitement and originality, and it also, I mean, the action in general was just phenomenal. So it's hard to beat, even though Terminator 2 is up there.
Terminator 2 is definitely... It literally came down to those two for me. It's either the Matrix or Terminator 2, but Matrix wins just because I think it was a lot more, dare I say, original. I know that Terminator 2 has... I'm not bashing Terminator 2 at all. That's easily one of my favorite movies. Like, top 3 for me, easily. But I think The Matrix just has so many revolutionary things in it that it's impossible to overlook. I mean, I have a whole video on our channel that you guys should watch explaining why I think The Matrix is, in my opinion, like one of the greatest movies ever made, if not the greatest movie ever made. It's spectacular. So, easy one for me. Easy.
Luke,
It's
all up to you.
I was.
There is a right answer.
It's none of those. It's none of those. I was thinking I would choose a '90s movie. I honestly was. I was going through a list. Like I literally Google searched it, and I was just like, "Ooh, this is gonna be a tough one." But then I Google searched '80s movies, and I was like, "Holy crap!"
There's so many good ones there, right?
You can't deny. I'm gonna have to go with Raiders. Raiders of the Lost Ark, man. I'm telling you.
Oh, Cody's not a fan.
Cody, you want to go right now? You want to go with me?
Come over. I need company.
I'll take you outside. I'll give you coronavirus all over
I'll
the
give you
place.
some COVID.
Yeah, apparently Cody's in a bowling alley for those who aren't watching on YouTube. I don't know. Apparently he gets most of his action nowadays.
No one's here. No one's here. No one's
Cody,
working.
you're not a fan of Raiders of the Lost Ark?
I don't know. Which one was that? The first one?
Yeah.
Is that the one with the boulder?
Yes.
Yeah. It's all right. I can appreciate it for what it is. Kind of like Star Wars. I don't know.
Wow. But here's the thing. I mean, Raiders is in that. Aliens is in that.
Predator is in that.
Predator's in that. Big Trouble in Little
Predator.
China is in that. Come on, guys.
And let's not forget the Mac Daddy. It's not the best, but the Mac Daddy of all action movies, Commando.
Commando.
Yeah. Classic.
Suburban
How about
Commando, Joel.
Rambo?
Dude, you're telling me.
Oh yeah, First Blood. You got classics in the 80s, man.
You got some really solid things.
Yeah, I would feel like again, like what we made this point earlier on, which is we may not agree on what the best action movie is from that decade, but I think we can all agree that what, Cody? Something
I don't
came
know.
up.
Yeah. Go on. Ignore me.
Here's
Come
the
back
thing.
to me.
What?
Here's another thing. Empire Strikes Back was in the 80s. So was Return of the Jedi. So was the first Batman. I mean, we're talking about...
I
It's
think
impossible.
That was the point I was going to make, which is I think it's not debatable that those were the best decades for action movies.
Yeah.
Because we're naming off all these examples, and I'm sure everyone can point to different examples and be like, this is way better than this. But I'm like, guys, I feel like I'm trying to be as fair as I can here and say, objectively speaking, I think the 80s and 90s were the best decades for action movies. And that's not to knock on the other decades. I'm sure they have a lot of classics in them as well, but I just feel like 80s and 90s is where it was at. And, I mean, we got some good ones nowadays, but yeah.
Well, look at the Matrix series.
Mm-hmm.
The Matrix came out in '99,
Mm-hmm.
and then look at the subsequent Matrix. What do you say? Matrices?
Matrices? The
Matrices?
The plural of the Matrix.
They were garbage.
The Punnett Square.
It was the '90s. It was that decade. It was that era.
It was
Yeah.
there, man. It's always
It
like
did
it's always the nostalgia factor. Anyway, all right. So what's the next category? Let's move on. We're all in sync with this one.
All right, guys. Here's the next one. Ready?
Oh, no, here we go. Yes.
Who was the best James Bond?
Oh, impossible. It's impossible. It's disgusting.
Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood's the best James Bond.
It's very possible.
How many James Bonds are there?
All right, you got Sean Conn.
Yes. The con man.
You got Roger Moore.
Mm-hmm.
You got Pierce
Timothy
Brosnan. You got Timothy Dalton.
Daniel
You
Craig.
got Daniel Craig, and you got that other guy.
George Lazenby.
Yeah, there you go.
George Lazenby. There was other people that played him as well in like other subsequent like films or TV series, but those are the main 6 that we're talking about here because they were in the main Eon Productions movies. Believe me, I know a lot about James Bond. But those are the main 6. Yeah, it's Sean Connery, George Lazenby, Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, and Daniel Craig. All have their strengths, all have their weaknesses. And this isn't necessarily which Bond movie we all love the most. I feel like our favorites are Casino Royale and GoldenEye. I'm just gonna say it. But as far as who was the best James Bond, that's a difficult question. It's a difficult question.
I'll start.
Well, here you go. I mean, well, let me set the scene here because, look, each James Bond came with a different era, right, and a different feel and vibe.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you can't say like, oh yeah, Roger Moore was a cheesy James Bond. He was like a comedy actor, but like that was the movie. That was what it was, right? Like, if that's what you were down with, then he was an awesome James Bond.
This is true. There is a context to the one you picked because, I mean, the era definitely plays a part in how they were portrayed. There's no question about that. But I guess it's just like if you had to pick one that you're like, I like this representation of Bond the most, regardless if it's an accurate representation of how he was supposed to be in the books or how it was reflecting the era. I think it's just like, which one do you prefer to watch the most? And I think that's probably how we should preface the question. So, Joel, you said you were going to start with this.
Yeah, I'm going to just jump out the gate and say Pierce Brosnan.
Whoa, I was not expecting that, actually.
Yeah, it's because of Goldeneye.
It's because of Goldeneye. No, I think he is. All right. Personally, when I think of James Bond, I think of like the smoothest man possible, both personality and skin, and
use some Clearasil
on top of like, yes, they can kick anybody's butt, blah blah blah. And I feel like Pierce Brosnan was just the smoothest. He was like like just his voice was like he just was the most suave person on the planet, more suave than Daniel Craig. I think Daniel Craig is great. I just think he's a bit intense for the character. And I feel like Pierce Brosnan like dialed it back a little more fake, obviously, but I enjoy that as that fictional character.
Interesting. I was actually not expecting you to say that.
What did you think I was going to say?
I thought you were going to go with Daniel Craig, as a matter of fact, because I think, like, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I think Casino Royale is probably we all consider that to be like the best James Bond movie. I mean, with no disrespect to the old ones, I have a soft spot in my heart for the old ones, but I feel like Casino Royale is like the pinnacle of James Bond movies. And in fact, there was just an IMDb tournament of like a single elimination tournament. Jeez, guys, I can't talk today. There was a tournament of ranking the best James Bond movies, and Casino Royale won. So I'm like, all right, this isn't an unpopular opinion, but I was just kind of like, because the only good Pierce Brosnan James Bond is GoldenEye. The rest are kind of like, eh.
Yeah, and I think so. I'm trying my hardest not to just favor my favorite movie of them. I'm trying to just like disconnect that with the actual actor who played that character.
Yeah.
So I think Pierce Brosnan, to me, even though he didn't have my favorite movies, I mean, I love, Casino Royale and Skyfall are probably my two top, and then GoldenEye maybe a third. I don't know. For some reason, if I see his face in any other movie, I'm like, that's James Bond. And Daniel Craig, I'm like, meh. He can disguise himself a little more.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. Cody, I know you have a strong opinion on this. You talk about this all the time. Every time I see you, I'm like, Cody, please, can we not talk about this today?
And I just cannot stop myself. Pierce Brosnan, obviously, because he's handsome and he's a classy fellow. And if I were gay,
you need word.
What do you mean if?
I'd be Drew. Joel.
So we got 2 votes for Pierce Brosnan. I did not see this going this way, guys. I'm actually a little surprised by this, as a matter of fact.
Me too.
Interesting. So you're a Pierce fan. Again, GoldenEye is your favorite, I imagine, right?
Yeah, I like GoldenEye and Casino Royale. It's the only 2 James Bond movies I can stand. The rest of them are crap.
You didn't like Skyfall? Skyfall was pretty good.
It was good. That was a good movie.
Great,
Cody. It was a fantastic movie.
It was all right.
Javier Bardem did a pretty good job in that movie. That was a pretty cool villain.
Javier Bardem. They reintroduced the old Aston Martin DB5.
You got your Judi Dench.
It was a Spanish Joker, is what it was.
Yeah, that's kind of what it was, actually. It was kind of like a Spanish Joker.
I ain't mad at that.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'll throw you a curveball. Describe your last bathroom experience with a movie title.
Oh, wow. That is a curveball.
It's definitely Fast and Furious.
I'll start. 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh my gosh. So, This is like people that are at this point haven't tuned out. This isn't like uncommon. This is how Cody usually throws curveball. He does this all the time. When we're like hanging out and normal, he's just like, by the way, I have a question for you. All right.
By the way,
how would you describe your last?
Joel?
Raging Bull.
Lucky dog, you.
Classic.
Luke, what was yours?
Bring it home. Luke, you gotta have one.
Oh man, guys,
You're on the spot.
Probably cliffhanger.
Oh God.
I almost spit up my drink.
Oh my god.
Oh God.
Cliffhanger.
It was between that and Desperado.
Desperado.
Desperate measures.
Maybe even The Fifth Element.
Gets all sci-fi. That's metaphysical.
Oh God.
Three's Company.
Three's Company. Yeah. Oh good Lord. What were we even talking about? I don't know anymore. Oh God. That's funny.
We're talking about James Bonds.
Oh yeah. So Luke, who's your favorite James Bond?
You're on me.
Jeez. Got 2 for Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah,
Oh,
Pierce
God.
Brosnan, man. That's so funny. Pierce Brosnan.
Jeez. Everyone's going with Pierce, huh?
Look,
That's it is.
Look, here's the thing. We were all of that age when GoldenEye came out. That was the James Bond. That was the revival of James Bond, right? It was like he was the coolest. Can't deny Daniel Craig is a badass James Bond. But I don't know. I agree. Pierce Brosnan.
Interesting.
I don't know why.
I'm gonna stray off course here a little bit because I think I've seen all but one of the James Bonds. I think it's
George Lazenby.
Yeah, no, not that guy. I haven't seen one of the Dalton films, but I've seen all 6 actors and I've seen all the movies essentially. And after seeing them all, and I have a soft spot in my heart for Pierce Brosnan, just because GoldenEye was the first James Bond movie I saw. Of course, the video game. I think that movie is arguably still my favorite, even though I think Casino Royale is the best. But I still think my favorite James Bond is Sean Connery. I think the OG, he is the most entertaining to watch. There's something so undeniably charming about that man and how he portrays James Bond. It's a little silly and it's a little dated, but it's still so enticing of a performance. And I hear all the points you have about Pierce Brosnan. Again, GoldenEye's arguably my favorite of the franchise. But I feel like Sean Connery is like he staked the flag and everybody else is just kind of doing their own thing. I think I'd even probably put Daniel Craig above Pierce Brosnan a little bit.
Wow.
I wouldn't have said that a couple years ago, but I've come around. The more and more I learn about James Bond in the series, I'd probably put Pierce third on the list.
See, I just picture them 3 in a room. Daniel Craig, like Pierce Brosnan, Sean Connery, all in the same room, all James Bond. I just feel like Pierce Brosnan would out-suave them all with his colognes.
Are they all the same age? Are they all the
lotions.
same age?
They're all the James Bond age.
Because if it's Sean Connery now, Sean Connery would just be like, I hate you all.
Yeah, well, he could probably barely walk at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I think Pierce Brosnan was he was kind of like an average medium between them all. Like I actually asked my wife this the other day because we were watching one of the James Bond movies, and I said, I want you to tell me who the best looking James Bond is, and she said, probably Pierce. I slapped her across the face and I said, you were supposed to be me.
How dare you?
But yeah, I'm like, yeah, he's a good looking man, and I think Daniel Craig is a lot more believable as like if this was to really happen. I feel like Daniel Craig would be the actual spy who would be, and he's actually a lot more. I read the first book, Casino Royale, It's nothing like the movie. But he is actually probably the truest representation of the character from the book. So I'm like,
he's like
all
blonde hair. He's like blonde hair, blue eyed, right?
No, he's actually more. He actually looks a lot more like Sean Connery. But the personality,
Nice.
the personality, and the mannerisms and all that stuff like that are a lot more akin to the novel. But yeah. Anyway, so 3 for Pierce Brosnan and 1 for Sean Connery. I did not see this going that way, guys. But
by the way, side note, I'm looking at like current Sean Connery photos, and man, it's just depressing.
Oh yeah, he's one of those guys along with Clint Eastwood, and no knock on them. Good for them for living this long, but how are they still alive?
Yeah. Sean Connery, well, shoot, the latest photo I've seen, he's 87, and he is just the quintessential old man walking with a cane.
I mean, well, yeah, I mean, if you're 87, I mean, it's weird to me, like, think when Dr. No came out, the first official James Bond movie, this is 1962, and he was, like, our age. And you think how long ago that was.
Yeah, 62, and you're in your early 30s.
Like, that just seems to me like, imagine if, like, me and my wife, we watched Look Who's Coming to Dinner. It's with Sidney Poitier. Yeah. And it's a great film. I enjoyed it. And it was so weird to me to think, like, how old that film is. And I'm like, imagine, like, if you made a movie that came out in the 60s and you watched it again today, that you were in, you'd be like, this was a lifetime ago. I like all these things that happened that have happened since then. Like, it's just got to be such a weird, surreal thing. Like, we watched things that we did 10 years ago. Like, man, it seems like a while back. Times that by like 5. It's gonna be like, dude, that's such a surreal experience.
You know what weirds me out about that guy? I mean, it's not like, actually, it's very respectable, but the fact that he retired and he like didn't come out of retirement. He was like the first actor that I was aware of who like retired, and I just never saw him again. And he was like so famous at that point, and I can't think of like any other actor who has like retired who wasn't already like 95. But it was just like, why is he not doing any movies anymore? It's like probably because he would just want to enjoy the rest of his life doing whatever he wanted to do.
Yeah, I don't blame him at all for that.
Yeah.
If I was him in the shoes, I'd be like, I got nothing else to prove. I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to go live my life and go do fun stuff.
I've made enough money.
Yeah, seriously. All right, moving on.
I was just gonna say last thing. So apparently the next James Bond with Daniel Craig. Apparently Daniel Craig is never gonna stop being James Bond, even though he says he's gonna stop being James Bond. Is called No Time to Die, and it's Dr. No is the villain.
That's what it's rumored. It probably is. Yeah, Dr. No. It's
Rami Malek as Dr. No. Interesting. Anyways,
see.
Very cool. I like it. I like Rami Malek. Okay. Anyways, all right. That's number 2. Number 3 is. Okay. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Who played the best Batman?
Oh God. Well, there's been a lot of Batmans. There's almost been as many Batmans as there has been James Bond, as far as actors go. Because we gotta name them off. Cody, name us off all the Batman actors that you can think of.
Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, George Clooney, and Christian Bale, and Adam West.
And Ben Affleck.
Oh.
And Val Kilmer. And Kevin
I said
Conroy.
Val Kilmer.
Oh, yeah. I say, do we include Kevin Conroy?
Of course, you have to include Kevin Conroy.
I don't know. I feel like apples to oranges.
He is the quintessential Batman voice.
Well, I'll say he's the best animated Batman. I feel like it's apples to oranges a little bit to include Kevin Conroy.
Yeah. Yeah, because then you would have to, like, if you were going to do Jokers, you would have to include Mark Hamill.
Yeah, and that throws the whole thing off. I'm like,
all right.
But as far as actors go, Cody, you go first. Who is your favorite Batman actor?
I like Christian Bale.
You like Christian Bale, do you? Yeah, I feel like that would have been the... I'm predicting that's going to be the most common answer amongst us. Just because he is in the best Batman films. I think we all agree with that. But,
it's obvious.
But what about his performance did you like the most? Just because it was realistic?
Just because he's the best looking one. I mean, if I were gay, I would definitely want to hang out with him.
This is a common theme with Cody tonight. He's trying to tell us something.
Yeah. What are you trying to get at? Trying to understand something. All right, so he's handsome.
Yeah. You just, you can't beat Christian Bale. You just can't. Well, they're a different style of film. I'm sure Michael Keaton would have done just as well in the same Batman movie if, Christopher Nolan would have chosen Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton probably would have been my favorite, but maybe it was the direction that was different. I don't know. But I think Christian Bale pulled it off.
It's hard to separate direction and acting, and I guess like all those little nuances that play into it. But I guess if we're using the same context, like which Batman do we enjoy watching the most? Not necessarily, because it's hard to debate the best. I guess it just comes down to I enjoyed watching that Batman more than that Batman type of thing. Not the movie, the character. But yeah, all right, Christian Bale. Luke, what about you?
This is a tough one because I'm kind of a split personality when it comes to Batman. And Batman, for the record, is my favorite superhero.
Yeah, quote unquote.
I don't know. My favorite movies are the Nolan movies. Nolan movies.
That's easy, yeah.
That's an easy one, obviously. But the Batman of my youth was Michael Keaton. Mm-hmm. That's what I grew up with. So I have to say Michael Keaton.
Because of the nostalgia?
Because of nostalgia. Because that's the Batman that introduced me to Batman. But I will say I am very much so looking forward to Robert Pattinson's Batman.
Interesting.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm still mixed on his casting.
Are you looking forward to it as in you're just intrigued as to how the heck he's going to play it, or you actually are just a huge fan of his?
I'm intrigued on how he's going to play it. I think he's an interesting actor. Mm-hmm. More than anything. I'm not a super huge fan one way or the other.
Right.
I think I'm just I'm intrigued on how he's gonna do it. I think DC really screwed up with how they directed Ben Affleck. I think Ben Affleck actually could have been a cool Batman. I really do. I think he could have suited the part. I think he really bulked up for the part. And I actually like the style of Ben Affleck's Batman. I really do. I like his fighting style. I like how they directed the fight scenes. But story-wise, garbage. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Michael Keaton, just from nostalgic purposes.
Yeah, I just a quick side note. I agree with the Ben Affleck part. I feel like that whole backlash thing was so stupid when it came out, and for the most part, I don't think those movies are not his fault at all.
No,
not his fault. And there's a lot of discussion as to whose fault that was about why those movies suck, but it certainly is not his. It's not Henry Cavill's. It's not Gal Gadot's. No, not their faults. They did a good job. And for the record, I think I told you guys before. I passed by, when I used to work at Sony, I passed by Ben Affleck unsuspecting. As I passed by him, I was like, this gargantuan man. I was like, dude, who the heck is this dude? And it turned out to be Ben Affleck as I walked past him. And I was so surprised because it was right before they announced that he was going to be Batman. And I always just picture Ben Affleck as kind of this scrawny dude from Armageddon or Good Will Hunting. And then I passed by him, and he's like, wait, I'm 6'2", and I think Ben Affleck's 6'3", 6'4", like that. And he's just he was bulked up. And I remember thinking wow, that guy's massive. And the news came out that he was going to play Batman, and everyone was like, no! And I was probably the only one going, guys, I just saw this dude, and he's massive. I don't think you guys understand. He's a big dude. And I was actually dude, I think he can pull it off. I can see him as Batman. That guy can totally kick my butt.
Yeah.
Anyway,
no,
quick side story.
Watch the fight scenes in those movies, mm-hmm. Justice League and Batman v Superman,
mm-hmm.
and it's great. But just watch the fight scenes.
Yeah, more or less.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. All right, Joel, what's your pick?
I keep going back to your point, Dylan, which is which one I find the most entertaining to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to put aside, just like with the James Bond films, trying to put aside the actual films and like what I would prefer as like just content wise, I have to go with Michael Keaton too, because I think he is. I feel like Christian Bale, I think did a good job, but it's also, he didn't like really step out of bounds as far as like the way he portrayed that character. He just like was very monotoned and like would scream every now and again, and that was about it. He was pretty like, it was just like steady. It was a steady like acting job, and I feel like Michael Keaton was like all over the place and just overall much more entertaining. I thought he was funnier. I thought like the action he actually pulled off and like being serious and just looking cool, even though when you look at him like in real life, you're like that he played Batman. But overall, and that might have been, helped by Tim Burton, just like his directing choices or whatever, to make him actually look cool. But I don't know. I just, and nostalgia factor definitely props up that as well. But I think I'm just much more entertained by that Batman than the Nolan Batman.
Yeah, Michael Keaton's very interesting in that role. I've been trying to like understand how he got that role and why it works so well, because you wouldn't suspect him as like even if we today had to recast Batman and Michael Keaton was the same age today as he was 30 years ago, I think people would be like, dude, what are you talking about? That's the weirdest casting choice ever. And that's what happened back when he was casting. Yeah, it's really a bizarre thing. But to me, it comes down to like it's Christian Bale or Michael Keaton. Those are the two popular choices. Val Kilmer was okay. George Clooney, of course, no one likes that one. Ben Affleck was all right. But I think this is going to be so out of left field. But Cody can vouch for me on this one. I think my favorite Batman to watch, in the context of just the Batman I like to watch, is Adam West, as a matter of fact. And I know, totally out of left field, but Cody can vouch because when we were younger, when we used to go to the video store and we had to rent a movie, back before I knew any better, what was the one movie I'd always rent over and over and over, Cody? What would it be?
Mortal Kombat.
Now that one too, but there was another movie I used to rent constantly.
60s Batman.
Yeah, it was the 1960s Batman movie. It had like not the TV show, but it's like the movie from the TV show. That was like had all the villains in it. Has like shark repellent and all these like. Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb. Right. That to me is beyond entertaining. Just so classic, and I love it. And again, I'm not suggesting that they're good. It's a good movie by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, it's like if we wanted to pick a modern Batman, though, of like the realistic dark take, I'd probably lean towards, I don't know, split tie between Christian Bale and Michael Keaton. That's a hard bet. I'd probably go with Michael Keaton as far as which ones I like to enjoy more. Probably just by like a hair. But I'd probably say like if I had to watch any Batman right now, like a performance of Batman, I'd be like, put on the Adam West one. It's gonna be way more entertaining to me. I don't know. Totally out of left field, but that's my
interesting.
Opinion. I'm picking all the
Adam
60s
West.
ones. I'm picking Sean Connery and Adam West. I like the 60s apparently.
I know. What the heck is wrong with you?
You know what's funny? If it was 1996, I'd probably say Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
Like if I was like 12 years old, I'd be like, hell yeah, Val Kilmer. He was like awesome.
And you know what? If I had a gun to my head, I'd probably say George Clooney if they were telling me to say George Clooney.
Just an
because what I'm saying is like in the 90s, I love that movie. I love Batman Forever. I loved it.
Yeah,
when it came out.
Mainly because it had Jim Carrey in it.
Yeah, pretty much.
That was
pretty much.
Yeah, he was basically just doing the Joker. I know, like both Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey were just basically doing the Joker. But as
I know, they were very like similar characters in that movie for some reason.
Yeah,
what the heck?
I think they're just trying to show the other one up, or steal the camera. All right. Anyway, on to the next subject, whatever I said.
Oh, that's my okay. Here we go. Now we're getting into some interesting topics here. Ready?
Oh no!
Ready for this?
Oh, here we go. Yes.
Christopher Nolan versus James Cameron.
Oh no! Oh no!
Who's your favorite? Who's your favorite director and creator of film?
I don't have time to think.
Yeah, I know that. Well, I guess if we preface the question with like, are any of those two filmmakers? Anybody here is that their favorite filmmaker? Any of those two?
I like James Cameron. He's good.
So Cody, your favorite filmmaker is James Cameron. So I'm assuming you would take James Cameron over Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
Now, do you have any particular stance you could justify that with? Like, as in, can you say here's why?
I like more of James Cameron's films than I do Christopher Nolan's films, so I favor him.
End of podcast.
There's my reasoning.
Elfine.
The way Cody answered that made your question sound really dumb.
Yeah, that's essentially what this comes down to. Is I like it, and therefore that's it. I don't have any justification for it.
What more clarification do you need?
Do you ever want to elaborate on that whatsoever? Well, obviously they're similar directors in the sense they like large scale, big productions. They have a lot of sci-fi elements in their movies. They definitely have different approaches and style. Christopher Nolan is very cerebral. He loves to tell things in not a linear sense, whereas I feel like James Cameron is all about just making the most entertaining type of movie you can possibly make in a very traditional way, which is you just have your hero with this crazy obstacle, and it's going to be this large-scale production with all these effects, and it's just going to be super popcorn film. But there's not like too much... There's not a lot of like brain power involved with the story. Whereas Christopher Nolan's like, I'm going to do all that, but with brain power. So it's really difficult to pick between the two because I love both these filmmakers. And I think there's something to say for James Cameron's success. I still think he has, I think Avatar's a higher grossing film than Avengers Endgame. I think it's so stupid. They don't account for inflation and all these stupid nonsensical things. So Avatar is still the biggest film, I guess. If you don't account for inflation, it's Gone with the Wind is the biggest movie of all time. But but Avatar and Titanic were for the longest time the two biggest movies ever, and those were both directed by James Cameron. So that says a lot about his success. And Christopher Nolan hasn't even won an Oscar, I don't think yet. And James Cameron has like Titanic, which, regardless if you love it or hate it, has 11 Oscars, and that's saying something. And it had, for the longest time, the biggest box office ever. So that's an achievement. And it's really hard to pick between the two, but I think I'd probably go with Cameron, just like as a hair. Because at the end of the day, I'm all for just entertain me. Like, I don't need this to be the most, Christopher Nolan's amazing. Like, if you watch The Prestige, that movie is incredibly written. It's so meticulous in how it's all structured. I don't know how it pulled off, and don't get me started on Inception and, of course, The Dark Knight. But I feel like James Cameron just has such a simplistic way of telling a story in such an entertaining way that it can't be overlooked. And I think his box office numbers and his success all speak to that. So I'd go with Cameron, but by a hair.
Yeah, I know I'm struggling too. It's pretty tough because I feel like James Cameron has been very consistent with his movies. It's like hard to think of a movie that was like a flop.
Yeah.
Of his, even if it didn't like blow up in the box office, if you watch it, it's still good. Like the Abyss, for example, is like a great movie. So I feel like he's consistent, more consistent than Nolan is. However, I feel like Nolan, like you said, Dylan, is putting more thought into his stories.
Right, yeah.
And is trying to make them a little more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard because I feel like I'm more excited to see a new Nolan film than I am to see a new Cameron film.
Mm-hmm.
Though I don't know, that doesn't mean I like Nolan better, just because I feel like there have been more Nolan movies that I don't like as much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a
This
tough
is tough.
decision.
It's like choosing between your two kids.
Well, that's an easy one.
Yeah, sober's choice.
Well, I think
who directed Sophie's Choice.
Well, you just made a good point. Is that if Nolan, if Cameron wasn't making 40 billion Avatar sequels, I would disagree with you that no, I'm looking forward to the next James Cameron film, but I'm like, oh, I get Avatar 40 times more over. No, I think one was good enough.
Right.
I don't know why I need granted,
yeah.
I will be there to see that damn movie. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm gonna be there. I've waited 12, 13 years, however long it's been, to see the follow-up to any Cameron film. But nonetheless, I'm not excited about the sequel. However, that being said, Cameron is the king of making sequels great. I mean, he made Aliens out of nowhere, fantastic, and of course Terminator 2 that we've mentioned 1,000 times on this podcast. But I don't know, man. Like, I feel like that story was kind of like, where else could we take this? But
I know
he has had 12 years to figure it out. So
yeah, I don't know. I think right now I'm leaning just to say Nolan is my favorite, just because he does take risks, and I feel more excited to see his films, even though they might miss. I don't know. I don't know what the heck I'm saying anymore.
This is
I have no opinion.
Impossible debate. Luke, what about you?
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of agree with Joel. I would say Nolan.
Get out right now.
just from a standpoint of like he's consistently trying to like push that envelope as much as he can. He's like trying to expand the art, right? And Cameron has perfected the art. Like, Cameron has taken like movie making, and he's like, okay, I know this formula. Like, I know it, and I know it like the back of my hand, and I'm gonna make a movie that everyone is gonna love, guaranteed. It's not a gamble for him. He knows exactly what formula makes a great movie, and he's gonna do it. And good for him. That's amazing. That's awesome. Not a lot of people know that. But I don't know. I feel like Nolan has a little bit more of that, like, I got this crazy idea. I'm going to do it. You know? And like, it's more exciting. It's more exciting to me. More tingly. More tingly.
Yeah, I think there is something to be said for the creativity that goes within Nolan's films. I mean, there is something a lot more impressive about that. But I think what's so difficult to choose between these two guys is because they actually have a relatively small body of work. They only have like half a dozen films that they've made, but yet none of those films are flops, at least in a box office sense. We could probably disagree as to whether or not like a lot of people say Avatar is not that great. I disagree. But I know a lot of people that say like Interstellar is fantastic. I didn't like that movie. But I don't consider that movie a flop. I just consider it not my cup of tea.
I liked Interstellar.
Yeah, it wasn't my cup of tea. But yeah, it's like, again, like those little things like that where it's like, all right, but those are still considered successes, right? So this is where it's really difficult to choose between those two. But I just feel like if I had to sit and like pick the movies and like stack them against each other, like Terminator 2 versus The Dark Knight or Inception against like Aliens, like this would be a very difficult battle. But I would probably go with like James Cameron's catalog over Christopher Nolan's currently. Just be like, I feel like this is a better collection of movies that if I had to sit down and watch them, it'd probably be those. But that's nothing against that would not be an easy decision. Not
yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one because you're basically pitting like classics against contemporary movies, which is difficult.
Part, yeah. Yeah,
it's
difficult.
For the most
part, yeah. Cameron's had a lot. He's got a good 10, 15 years on Nolan's like breakout stuff. Because Nolan came onto the scene in 2000 with Memento, which is an amazing film. But like if you look at like Memento versus Terminator, I know apples to oranges a little bit, but like if we had to sit down and watch one of those movies, I have a feeling we'd be like, we're gonna watch Terminator.
Yeah. Memento is like I'm gonna like exercise my brain a little bit here.
Yeah.
Like it's not a real enjoyable. I'm just gonna sit down and eat some popcorn movie.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what it is for all of Nolan's films. It's all kind of a brain exercise. I mean, I think the only one that's kind of somewhat simple is The Dark Knight. It's probably his most simple film, actually.
Yeah. Yeah,
for the
I
most
will
part.
say though, as far as like a technical, I'm gonna get real nerdy here. As far as a technical piece of movie making, in Interstellar, actually, one of the scenes in that movie is like hailed as like a great suspenseful scene, and it actually to me has a nod back to like alien type suspense, which is when Matt Damon, the character, steals that spaceship and he goes to the thing and blah blah blah.
Spoiler alert! Yeah.
Spiller and the ship is like spinning, right?
Yeah.
And they have to go to that ship and they have to like match the speed and dock with it. That scene is like hailed as like one of the greatest scenes of like suspense and mixed with like score and like pacing and shots and like all this stuff. And it's like that to me is he's like, I feel like Nolan is actually like nodding to people like Cameron, who's like, okay, this scene right here, this is like simple. This isn't like a cerebral, you have to think about it scene. This is a very, very simple scene where we have to do a very simple task. But I'm going to shoot it in a way that is like, if you're playing a sport, he's using the fundamentals. You know, he's like he knows his fundamentals. He knows how to make a film. He's hitting all those key points that like you have to hit, right? Great music, great pacing, great editing, all these things. I think he knows it. I think he knows it just as well as Cameron. I think he's willing to take that next step to make it even more of a gamble.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, that's a good point. And another one of it's probably my favorite scene of that movie is when they land on that water planet and like the clock is ticking basically, and they have to like land and get out of there as fast as possible. And I think that scene is also pretty straightforward as far as how it's shot. I mean, it's basically just like film the actors and that's it. There's nothing really too complicated about it. But then it leads into a more complicated subject, which is like distance and time, and like how that messes up with like the person who's like still on the normal spaceship, and like they get back to the spaceship and he's like 10 years older than they are, and they've only been on the planet for like an hour. It's like that stuff is what makes his movies so fun to watch, is because like that's not something like that's not a Cameron theme. It's like very a Nolan type of thing. That's why it's just that more exciting. But
and that's not fake. That's the crazy thing. Like that, he didn't make that up.
yeah,
Like that would actually happen if
Right.
that really was the case, which is insane.
well, he did his homework for that movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cody, what would if you had to pick between, as far as Cameron movies, would you rather watch Titanic or Terminator 2?
Probably Terminator 2
Freaking
because
liar.
I don't know. I don't know why that is.
What if
Because
Arnold was on the Titanic,
Ooh, that'd be something to watch. I like to mix it up a little bit.
just pushing children and women out of the way?
Yeah.
Cody, what is your favorite movie currently? I mean, I know like our lists always change like on a weekly basis, but if you had to pick your favorite movie of all time, I assume it's a Cameron film.
The Last Mimsy,
Yes.
which was directed by
Nanny McPhee.
God knows who. Yeah. I think I always go back to There'll Be Blood as one of my favorites.
Interesting.
That was a great movie.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
Speaking of unpopular opinions, I like that movie, but I'm not with you guys on that one. I don't think it's as great. I've watched it probably 3 or 4 times, and I still am like, it's okay, it's all right. I'm not in that.
It's kind of
that
hard to
camp.
get through.
Yeah.
It's hard to get through, and it's like it's weird to think about a movie that is 100% carried by one performance.
Yes. That's kind of what that is. I mean, if it really wasn't that good, that movie, I don't know. I don't think it would work as well as if it wasn't for his performance.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, granted, the kid, or the guy, the other guy, the Reverend, I forget his name.
Paul Dano.
Paul Dano. He does a fantastic job. Like I'm not I'm not on his performance, but like,
Right.
like that movie is 99.9% that one performance. Like you can't like you almost forget about the story. It's just
if he's not on the screen, you're looking at your phone.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can imagine if you could imagine like another great actor that's very like kind of like delves into the role. Like imagine if Christian Bale played that role and he like lost a bunch of weight to play it or something like that. Be a great performance, but I still think like if it weren't for the genius that is Daniel Day-Lewis, who is arguably he's got to be top 3 best actors we've ever had, and like you said, it all comes down to that performance carries this movie. Because, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great elements. The cinematography works, the music is actually kind of engaging, and the story's all right. Like it's all right, like the oil tycoon that's corrupt and a morality tale. But yeah, it's like it's not a very rewatchable movie to me, and I've watched it like 3 or 4 times, trying to be like, what am I missing? Because everyone tells me this is like fantastic, and I know like Cody says he loves it. I know Josh has mentioned a few times how much he loves that movie, and I'm like, guys, I'm not seeing it. It's okay.
That movie's weird because it almost like puts me in a trance. The way it's filmed and like the music and the acting is just kind of like this. It feels like a weird dream, like when I'm watching that movie. But I don't know if I'm entertained watching it. I just feel like I wake up like 3 hours later. I'm like, what just happened? And I don't really want to rewatch it. It's just like it's too. I don't know, something about it. It's just not rewatchable to me.
Yeah. What I'm trying to get at is Cody's opinion sucks.
Huh? Dang it.
What were you gonna say, Luke?
I was gonna say that's like Shawshank to me.
You don't love Shawshank?
No, I love Shawshank. I love it. I will watch it front to back to front. 3 times a day if I could, but it's one of those movies that like it just puts me into a trance. I'm just like I black out and I'm like, oh, I'm at the credits.
Yeah, that's not a movie to me that is like we all love Shawshank. I bet you it's guaranteed if we had to make a top 10 list, it would be, I don't know about Cody, but it would definitely be on our top 10 for sure. Cody, would Shawshank be in your top 10?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Freaking liar.
Yeah, it would be.
It would be?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right below Last Menzie.
Right under retroactive.
Yeah.
Retroactive.
And What Lies Beneath.
Hey, What Lies Beneath is an entertaining movie. It's silly and stupid, but that movie is entertaining. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I forget what we're talking about. A billion different movies. I don't know which we're talking about.
Yeah. I don't remember either.
All right. Well, I think we're actually out of time for this one, as a matter of fact. So we're going to probably cap it off right here. But if you guys are still watching and listening at this point, thank you for sticking it out. I don't know why you find us this entertaining, but we appreciate it. And I'm hoping Cody will find his way home eventually from this bowling alley that he's in.
Take me home.
Country roads.
Country road.
I was hoping somebody else would carry that tune, but I guess no one can sing.
It's better that we don't.
Yeah, probably not. All right, well, everybody, thank you for watching. Of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're still there. Check us out on SoundCloud, iTunes, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are posting all these fun things that you will really enjoy, so please subscribe and like and follow us, and we hope it'll be worth your while. But until then, we will be back next week with a new episode. Any party words, guys, before we check out?
Peace out.
No.
Home slice.
Okay, well, then we're going to get out of here. All right, see you later.
Peace.
Bye.